How to wake up early every day and not feel tired. 73 years of life equals 23 years of sleeping. And how long are you planning to live? We can't decide how long our lifespan is going to be, but we can do some things that can help us feel better while we're alive. Do you feel tired no matter how much sleep you get? There have been many studies done on the amount of sleep a person actually needs, and those studies also teach us ways of taking the best out of it. There's a plethora of articles on this topic, and all of them are pretty much the same. They say how 7 to 8 hours is enough sleep for an average adult, and you've probably read at least a few of those, and you probably tried this many times. Hence, you still end up feeling tired even with 8 hours of sleep. But what none of those articles mentions is that it's not really the number of hours that's important, but the time we wake up, which means that even if you get an 8-hour sleep but wake up at the wrong time, you'll end up feeling tired. As ridiculous as this sounds, it is true, and there's scientific proof of this. The thing you need to pay attention to is what is called sleeping cycles. One sleeping cycle consists of 90 minutes of sleep, where in the first 20 minutes you're in process of trying to sleep, and during this time you'll wake up very easily because it's what experts call light sleep. The second phase is where the real sleep starts. During this phase you're fully asleep, and waking up is very hard. And then you move to the third phase, which is the deep sleep, which is stable. And what occurs during this phase is something called rapid eye movement. And what's actually happening is that your brain is starting to store all the information that happened during the day when you were in the right places. There's a thing called short-term memory and another called long-term memory. And we can best compare these to the hard disk and RAM in your computer. So you better understand this. During this stage, all the information and things that you have learned that day move from the short-term to the long-term memory, and your brain puts them on shelves. When it's done doing that, you're ready to move to the final stage of the sleep cycle, which is the live sleep. Now that's the whole process of the sleep cycle, so next time you're going to bed and know exactly when you want to wake up, then make sure you go to sleep on time so you wake up at the right phase of the sleeping cycle. If you, let's say, sleep for 6 hours, it means that you're sleeping 4 sleep cycles that night, and when you wake up at the end of your 4th cycle, you'll feel well rested and ready for the day. The main reason people don't wake up fresh and struggle to wake up in the first place is that they're waking up at the wrong time of their sleeping cycle. They're trying to wake up while their brain hasn't finished storing information, and forcing it to stop is what makes you tired in the morning. Once again, that's why it's important to go to bed on time so your brain can do its cycles and you wake up at desired time, well rested and in the right sleeping phase. So let's say that you plan to wake up at 7 a.m. in the morning. This means that you should go to sleep at 11:30 p.m., which equals 5 hours of sleep, and you'll wake up refreshed, well rested and ready to go through your day. But if you go to bed only 30 minutes before or later, then you'll wake up at the wrong cycle, and those 30 minutes of extra sleep will actually harm your morning instead of helping you. Now, don't get me wrong, you don't need to count every single second or minute. It's still gonna be okay if you wake up 10 to 15 minutes later because you're then in the light phase of the next sleeping cycle. And remember that earlier in the video we said that it's very easy to wake up during this sleeping phase. If you're 10 to 15 minutes late, you still won't be tired, but just a bit more tempted to go back to bed than if you'd woken up right on time. Now that you've learned about sleep cycles and the way to use them correctly, let's talk about another thing that may be a cause of your tiredness in the morning. So if you're following these sleeping cycles but still feel tired, it may be that you're not getting enough sleep. Following sleeping cycles doesn't mean that you can sleep less, because if you sleep for just 1 or 2 cycles, meaning you spend an hour and a half to 3 hours sleeping, then no wonder you're still feeling tired. This is simply not enough time for your body and mind to fully recover for the day and rest properly. So, if you want to feel refreshed, energized, and ready for the day, you'll need to do another thing, which is sleep enough. Now, this is different for almost every person, but the average is that an adult needs at least 5 sleeping cycles or at least 7.5 hours of sleep. And this leads us to the conclusion that those articles are not that true because they recommend sleeping around 7 or around 8 hours, while none of those leaves you waking up in the right sleeping cycle. This is also the reason why so many people feel exhausted from sleeping for 10 hours, and it's not because they slept long, but because they simply woke up at the wrong time of their sleeping cycle. The best thing to do in your attempt to wake up well rested is to try different amounts of sleeping cycles for a few days. This way you'll be able to determine exactly how much sleep you need, which will help you create your own schedule, making sure that you wake up at the right stage of the last sleeping cycle and see how many cycles your body needs. Now let's talk about struggling to fall asleep in the first place. This happens to many people, and one of the reasons for this may be that they're consuming food and drinks that are not that sleep-friendly. Some of those can be red wine, coffee, and chocolate, which you should avoid consuming before bed. To enjoy a long and restful sleep, it's important that your sleep cycle is as uninterrupted as possible. Achieving a deep and energized slumber can take up to 4 hours, so any interruptions during this time will reduce the quality of your sleep and leave you exhausted in the morning. To prevent these foods and beverages from disrupting your sleep, it is best to avoid consuming them after noon, and if that's not possible, try to eliminate these things by 6 p.m. at the very latest. The next thing to do before bed is to take a warm bath, and after that, you'll sleep like a baby. A warm bath increases your body temperature, and the rapid cool-down period immediately afterwards relaxes you. This triggers a sleepy feeling, as most of your metabolic functions, such as your heart rate, breathing, and digestion, slow down in the process. There have been many studies and research showing that a bath at 104 to 109 degrees Fahrenheit is effective at decreasing wakefulness, and soaking about an hour or two before bedtime will help to get you ready to doze off. And if you don't own a bathtub, don't worry because a nice hot shower will work just as good. The next thing you're probably not paying attention to is the room temperature of your bedroom. A room too hot or too cold can also disrupt your sleep quality, which is why it's important to adjust the temperature to what's comfortable for you, where it's not too hot or too cold, and instead set it up to be just right. When you're trying to sleep, your body temperature decreases, which induces sleep. But the body can't achieve that mild drop in temperature if the room is too hot or too cold. Even if you do get to sleep, your sleep quality is significantly compromised. Finding the best temperature range for sleeping isn't easy, since people's preferences can differ. But typically, it's recommended to keep it somewhere between 65 and 70 degrees. The last thing we're gonna talk about today is lighting. Light makes you alert, and that's a big help when you first wake up, but not when trying to get to sleep. As it gets darker at the end of the day, our brains receive the signal that it's time to prepare for sleep. The pineal gland begins to produce melatonin, a hormone that regulates our sleep cycle and makes us tired, whose levels rise throughout the night and stay elevated until the morning. But if you're exposed to a bright light while you're trying to fall asleep, it will inhibit the natural production of melatonin and interrupt your sleep cycle. That's why it's important to make sure your lights are turned off, and to get prepared to sleep, make sure to dim the lights about an hour before going to sleep. This brings us to the end of today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, make sure to sleep tight and don't let the bedbugs bite. But before that, hit the bell button so you can get notified whenever there's a new video ready for you.